Anindoda, Shishirji, we are ready to go. Professor Shekhar Mande has joined. Shishirji, we are ready to go.
Okay,
Anindoda.
so I'm giving the countdown.
Uh,
After completion of the countdown, when I will say start, you please start your program. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Start.
गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू ऑल। आप सभी का स्वागत, अभिनंदन एवं आभार। जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं, टुडे वी आर हियर।
शिशिर जी, थोड़ा सा आपका ऑडियो में थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है। नहीं सर जी, कुछ सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है।
Shishir ji, can you speak a little bit louder?
सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है।
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Welcome to all and आप सभी का स्वागत, अभिनंदन एवं आभार। आज हम सभी यहाँ पे आए हैं और we are having a fruitful discussion today with us and we are having renowned personalities with us। और ये जो प्रोग्राम है, भारतीय शिक्षण मंडल दक्षिण बंग प्रांत एंड इंडियन एसोसिएशन फॉर द कल्टिवेशन ऑफ साइंस कोलकाता दोनों मिलकर कर रहे हैं। दिस इज अ नेशनल वेबिनार एंड वी आर हैविंग कीनोट स्पीकर विद अस प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर शेखर सी मंडे जी, जिनका नाम सभी जानते हैं, भली भांति परिचित भी हैं उनसे। हमारा बहुत सौभाग्य है कि आज हमारे साथ सर हैं यहाँ पे। सर डायरेक्टर जनरल हैं काउंसिल ऑफ साइंटिफिक एंड इंडस्ट्रियल रिसर्च CSIR and Secretary Department of Scientific and Industrial Research DSIR, Government of India. And we are having with us Professor Dr. Subhashish Chaudhary ji. Sir is Director General, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research CSIR. And Professor Dr. Subhashish Chaudhary ji, he is the Director, Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Bombay. And we are having with us Professor Dr. Shantanu Bhattacharya ji, Director, Indian Association for the Cultivation of Sciences, IACS, Kolkata. I would like to introduce our keynote speaker today, Dr. Shekhar C. Mande sir. Sir is Secretary and he is a Director General also. And he's having his specialization in the protein structure and functions, biology of Mycobacterium tuberculosis, probed through structural analysis of protein, various biophysical and biochemical approaches, applications of graph theory to large-scale protein interaction networks, computational methods to analyze large-scale biological data. Sir has done PhD, sir has done MSc and BSc from the Nagpur and PhD from the Bangalore. Sir has done his post-PhD career also. And if I am taking the whole thing, it will take half an hour to introduce sir. But sir has got the awards also. In that award, the worth mention is the Bharat Asmita Tantra Vigyan Puraskar 2019, Honorary DSc degree 2019 by the MIT University, Fellow Indian National Science Academy, Delhi, Fellow Andhra Pradesh Academy of Sciences, Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize of Biological Sciences, Wellcome Trust International Senior Research Fellow. So there is a long list of awards the sir got. And this is a great opportunity to listen from the sir. Now I would like to request sir, Dr. Shekhar C. Mande sir. Sir, please address the gathering and enlighten us with your thought. The topic is as insights from the draft of Science, Technology, Innovation Policy 2020. Sir.
Thank you very much, first of all of you, especially all our friends from Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal of the Dakshin Banga Prant for arranging this particular meeting today, in which you have very kindly invited me to participate. It's also good to see two very good friends, Subhashish Chaudhary and Shantanu Bhattacharya, both of whom actually are more of experts than I am in any of the matters that actually I'm going to talk about. So what I would do is I would rather restrict my own views to a shorter time, and possibly we'll have interaction with both of them, because as I said, that there is a larger aspect of STIP 2020 that is also to integrate with NEP 2020, the new education policy. And both of them, Subhashish as well as Shantanu, have been teaching for almost their entire career, and both of them have been outstanding researchers. So it will be actually good to have their views as well as my own. And how do we synthesize all of it together would be an interesting aspect. Now, STIP 2020 is currently put for consultation across the different sections of society. And if you would like to look at it, it's available on the website of DST, as well as is available on the website of the Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India. And one look at it actually tells you that this policy actually is fairly reformative. It has a very underlying current of reforms through it. How the science and technology will promote the innovation ecosystem in the coming years is essentially the focus of it. It begins with the 4 previous science, technology, and innovation policies that the country has had, starting from 1958. You may see that, I mean, the 4 previous policies were actually made since 1958, and the last one was actually there in 2013 that was made. So naturally, we ask a question that why do we need another policy within 7 years of the last one? And the immediate answer to that, of course, is that the COVID-19 period has actually opened our eyes to many different aspects in society. And for the scientific community, of course, it has been a realization that all of us had to work together. It has been a fantastic example in last 1 year that how different agencies of science and technology in the country, how different academia, including universities, colleges, IITs, IISers, national laboratories have worked together, and how academia and industry has worked together. There has been quite an eye-opening experience in last 1 year that all of us have always felt desired, but probably have not worked to the same expectations as what was there from all of us in these years. And therefore, this policy comes at a very right time, in my opinion, in last 1 year, that it has been formulated and it has been put forth. It has essentially 11 different arms of this particular policy. If you look at very cursory look at the policy paper, one is of course the open science. The second is capacity development. The third is about funding, then about research, then innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. Then how does one develop technologies and how do we indigenize different technologies, placing a lot of emphasis on what is called as frugal innovation system. Then equity and inclusion. How do we communicate our science with general public at large? How do we engage what is called as frugal innovation system? Then equity governance and what is the policy governance? So these are all the aspects that this policy looks at, and it is an exceptional 360-degree view on all of it. Let me very quickly, briefly mention each of these in 2 minutes, or maybe one minute, so that then we can have enough time our science with general public at large. We also get to hear the views of both my friends here who are with us in this particular one. Open science, when we talk about it, the underlying principle of open science around the world is that if public has supported any science and technology, public has the right to have access to anything that has been done by the public funding. Then my research is available whether the journals are actually publishing, they should be open access. Work or educational resources that I might have constructed in my lab, all of them must be accessible to public without any cost. This is the underlying principle that actually all of us have worked at. While writing this particular chapter, actually helps the gauge must be accessible, created across the country in different institutions. They ought to be available to anyone around the country. Maybe there would be some charge. Maybe industry, if it wants to use it, will have to pay some sum to it. Or maybe even universities and colleges, they want to use it. That they should be accessible. And with view of that, this particular sentiment, the PSS office has created a portal called iSTEM, or CSIR has created a portal called Analytics CSIR, in which all the available equipments across our laboratories are listed there. There is a contact point which is listed there whom anyone can contact and can actually access this equipment without any difficulty. As I said, at times nominal charge is made available to that so that we can maintain the equipment. But nonetheless, the thing is that, the philosophy we follow, the sentiments that we follow is that the instruments are available. Similarly, open access is another issue that actually one has to talk about. And in fact, the policy talks about something called one nation, one subscription. That is, if you are subscribing to some expensive journals around the world, one must actually have easy access to those across all the colleges, universities, and so on and so forth. So this is the one that actually we talk about. So there's the first chapter about openness. The second chapter is about capacity building. How does one actually train next generation human resources on the frontline areas? At the same time, how do we impart skills to the people on something what might appear actually mundane, but people actually might find those skills very useful for their self-sustenance. Now, this also involves centers such as innovation and entrepreneurship centers, which are extremely important. There's large amount of energy that is available in the country in which people are raring to go in converting those innovations into wealth. And we must promote them. So the ecosystem should be such that any knowledge that is generated in our colleges, state universities, central universities, IITs, ISCs, ISERs, national laboratories, we should be able to convert that knowledge into entrepreneurship by our young people across the country. And therefore, the policy actually talks about how can one actually create processes by which the younger people would feel enabled to convert knowledge into some sort of entrepreneurship ventures. We need to create infrastructure for that. We also need to create a proper ecosystem for all of these together. The third chapter talks about financing total science and technology and innovation. And it also talks of expansion of STI financing landscape. And I hope that we will get to hear in the forthcoming budget, maybe 4 or 5 days from now, about what new schemes that government is thinking about. And last year, we had already heard about the NRF, the new research fund that the government is actually proposing. And we do hope that government will be able to set aside a substantial amount for NRF in this particular one. But the government also looks forward to, or the STIP 2020 also looks forward to, incentivizing for science, technology, and innovation investments. If the private companies would like to come forward and invest in this, the policy also talks about a little bit of that particular aspect. The policy also talks about the governance of this particular aspects in that particular one. In terms of research, a significant focus in the NEP 2020 or the new education policy 2020 was actually how does one do evidence-based education and how research also enables education in schools and colleges and so on and so forth. STIP 2020 also talks of promotion of foundational and translational research. How does one enhance quality? And how does one actually have ease of doing research? All of these actually are dealt with into the research aspects of STIP 2020. Then, as I said, there's a complete chapter devoted to innovation and entrepreneurship. And I've already talked about this. Many IITs actually following this, IIT Madras, IIT Mumbai, all of them have actually set up very good role models for all of us to follow in how do we promote this innovation ecosystem in the country so that the young India feels enabled to convert our knowledge into entrepreneurship. It talks about technology parks and so on and so forth. The next chapter also talks about technology development and indigenization of knowledge. Now, this is a very critical chapter. When we talk of technology development also means that not only we adapt technologies for Indian use, that is possibly by indigenization, but we also generate technologies for making India Atmanirbhar, right? One of the lessons that we have learned in COVID-19 is our ability to be Atmanirbhar on all aspects and how wonderfully we have done in last 1 year in this particular area. But we also must remember that we don't live in a cocoon as a country, we live in a globalized world. And therefore, whatever we develop here has to be benchmarked at a global level. It should be available at a global level. And therefore, we must also promote disruptive technologies of future in our country. And that's exactly what the technology STIP tries to arrive at the balance of how we indigenize technologies and how we promote disruptive technologies so that we forcefully bring the fact forward that we live in a global world and the technology that are developed here today would become technologies of tomorrow around the world when we actually take it to them. STIP 2020 has a very important chapter on equity and inclusion. Now, these are actually something that we must ponder about. When we talk of equity and inclusion, we must remember that look at our education institutions today, or look at our national labs today, you find that by and large, certain amounts of sections are not very well represented. One aspect, just a small example of that is gender inequality across all our education institutions. But gender is only one aspect. When we talk of equality and when we talk of inclusion, we must talk of it as a comprehensively equality and inclusion at all different levels, with the socioeconomic status of people across the country, or whether their gender balance or whatever. All of it actually must be talked about as in one single basket. Then we must communicate our science with the public, and we must improve our communicative ability to the public. COVID-19 has offered us a terrific opportunity in telling society what we have been doing science and how science is helping mitigating the COVID-19 situation. But we must continue the movement of this particular one, COVID-19, and we must continue to generate next generation science communicators so that society is completely aligned what happens in the labs across the country. Now that brings us to internationalization of our science. As I said, Atmanirbhar Bharat is a concept which is not separated from the globalization of our science. Atmanirbhar has as important component of globalization as being self-sufficient in science. And international essentially means that we must engage ourselves with international community through bilateral, multilateral, and regional engagements. We must participate in large science and technology initiatives around the world. As we all know, there are many projects which are going on around the world, which are of very large scale, and Indian science and technology community must integrate with those. We must also engage with our diaspora abroad, living abroad, and we must try to see how they can be actually very productively engaged to bring value to Indian society. So they're the kind of thing that when we talk of globalization and of internationalization of science, technology, and innovation. The last two chapters talk mostly of governance. How do we have institutional architecture that promotes science, technology, and innovation? What kind of governance we have on research and innovation? And how do we actually strengthen the interconnectedness of all of this together? Now, that's a very important aspect of STIP 2020. And the policy governance also is an important aspect. That how do we institutionalize STIP policy and governance? I would just like to give an example here. A very example that happened 10 days ago is that CSIR has been very pleased to announce something called a new institute called National Institute of Science Communication and Policy Research. This institute aims to synergize all the policy matters which would be through science and technology that we can bring together or bring forth across different ministries and across different departments of government, and also across all the institutions that exist in the country. This institute has been set up in Delhi recently. It is essentially a merger of our two existing institutes, what used to be NISCARE, the National Institute of Science, Communication and Information Resources, and what used to be NISTADS, National Institute of Science, Technology and Developmental Studies. Together, we are actually synergizing to bring policy research to the forefront. Now, essentially, that's what actually wanted to talk about STIP 2020. What we should do, as I said, is we have two very distinguished colleagues with us. We should also hear from them, from both Subhash Chaudhary as well as Shantanu Bhattacharya, of their views, and then we can have some sort of an engagement, or we can have some sort of a dialogue between the three of us. Thank you all very much for listening to me patiently.
Thank you so much, sir. Really, it was a good insight of the STIP 2020. You have given an idea that this is really going to make the Bharat Atmanirbhar Bharat, and all the topics you just one nation, one subscription is really a much needed step, sir. And being in the Institute of Homeopathy, I really need so many journals, and this will going to be a lot of help to the new researchers also. And sir, capacity building, conversion of knowledge to entrepreneurship, and the way you told the promotion of fundamental and transitional research, this is really going to help us. And innovation ecosystem will help youth of India. Indigenization of knowledge, not merely adoption, but to make India Atmanirbhar in all aspects. This is really going to a benchmark for the world. And regarding gender equality, Yes, sir. This is a need of time and science to the public and the communication and the next generation science communicators. Governance, policy decisions, everything, sir. You told a very beautiful manner. And if anybody asks a question, because sir has a very limited time, sir has to go uh, uh, for some other meeting also. If anybody is having any question, they can ask.
Let us have comments from Professor Subhashis Chaudhary and Professor Shantanu Bhattacharya first. That might be better, isn't it? They may also would like to put forth their views.
Okay, sir.
Would like to go first?
Sir, actually, if you are having time, then we can go for Subhashis Chaudhary, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Next, we are having with us Dr. Subhashis Chaudhary, sir. He is a director, IIT Bombay, and his area of research are motion analysis and tracking, gesture analysis, data clustering and pattern recognition, recovery of depth from defocus, diffusion equation, super resolution imaging, content-based image retrieval, and computational photography. Sir has done a lot of job in the field of science and technology. I would like to request Dr. Subhashis Chaudhary, sir. So please enlighten us about this STIP 2020.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. First of all, I would like to thank Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal for inviting me. It's a great platform, and to be with two distinguished colleagues of ours, and it's as I was listening to Professor Mande, he has very succinctly given the summary of the entire, I think, the so-called the STIP policy, which probably doesn't need much elaboration at this point unless we have anything to discuss. But he said something that why we are changing 2013 and others, and within 7 years we have another one. So let me travel back in time and let's see what is the thing that triggers such kind of thing at today's life, in terms of why we need such kind of policy changes and what are the requirements. So if you look at, science education in India in recent times, okay, it's not that at all old. It's pretty recent compared to most of the European and other countries. And see, one of the great things was actually done where we have Professor Shantanu Bhattacharya here, is actually the cultivation of science was probably the first one which cultivated the sense of science as a research as well as experimentation in India, thanks to Mahendralal Sarkar. And that brought in a lot of good people into the platform of science. Okay, if you look at even all these three major universities those days in India in three corners, they started science at a much later stage. Okay, now at the same time, if you look at, so this is part of the educational side, but then there was a research component which is happening. And that's the cultivation of science is one, but it's not the only one. If you look at a little later, something back in South where somebody was trying with mathematics. Okay, so that's on their own. So there is not much of support. And similarly, when you look at Dr. C.V. Raman, he did not get enough support there, so he had to move to Calcutta to get the experiments and everything done. Okay, and Dr. Mande talked about open science and the equipment being expensive. So he had to actually beg for money to get his equipment so that he could do the experiment. And that's what got him Nobel Prize. Okay. So these are really fascinating thing in terms of how the science research has started in. But at the same time, if you look at C.V. Raman, he did not get enough support there along with that. And one of the, the biggest proponent was Sir P.C. Roy, who actually started Bengal Chemical those days. Okay, being a very well-known professor in chemistry. So that actually gave us a lot of activities. And if you see the patenting, which is a much later, it has not been too much of a thing until CSIR came up very strongly by focusing patenting, because that's what actually gives you the ownership right. And one of the earliest patents in India was by Indu Madhav Mallik, which was an ICMIC cooker, was a long, long time ago. Okay. Now, given this, now if you come to right now, that the education that has happened, you have this, the one is like the universities are doing education. And at the same time, there are a lot of these dedicated laboratories that got started, like CSIR is one example. So they brought in the research. Okay. Now, if you look at what is happening there, is that the research initially was more fundamental, but it was not getting into the translation. So what happens is that until my research gets translated into something, a product or service, we do not get to see the value of the research propagating to the level where the society benefits. Okay. Here it is, of course, like look at US, around 1800, 1850, the agriculture sector, like what predominantly we have been, until about even a few years ago, 62% of their population were actually in agriculture. And now, if you look at US, less than 2% of their population are doing in the agriculture, but they produce more, compared to what it used to be done those days. So what it means that by moving your population into one sector and creating a space for people to come up with a different kind of products and services, which is one of the, the great things that has happened in, let's say, US and Europe, is that you move and create space, okay? And that's where it brings in the wealth as well as the well-being of the general people. It creates job, it creates opportunity, and it improves the living standard, okay? Now, that usually is the spirit that we normally follow when you go for developing any kind of research policy. That number one, that India is a large country. Of course, there are a lot of research constraints, okay? I mean, not just research, but anyway, like the constraints that we have. But we have to take all the people together. Now, there was a time when we were growing up as a kid, we were always told that the large population of India was actually a liability, okay? Now, that has changed over the years. And now this young population is actually we are calling it demographic dividend. So how does it change? That's because we find these younger people actually being a lot more productive to the society, so that when you start producing or delivering things at a level which is more than what I consume, then you are also serving for somebody else, and collectively that pulls up the nation to a higher level. So that's the thing, that when we talk about Atmanirbharta, when you talk about the thing that we are talking competing at a global level, then we have to look at those aspects, okay? Then only, because finally we could be Atmanirbhar, but we have to go beyond and we have to create a value proposition for India as a nation, our people producing something which can compete at the global level, so other people can take our products and services. Similarly, of course, if we need something, we can always take it something from others. There's nothing over there, as long as you have a nice balance of our business. Now, if you look at that aspect, now I would relate, because I come from the academic, which Dr. Mande said. Now, there's a nice synergy that I see in the NEP 2020 and the corresponding that STIP policy that is coming up there. See, in tomorrow, if I have to survive, innovation has to continue at a fast pace, okay? And because our growth, not only the prosperity, as well as the well-being, that depend on how much innovation we bring in, and that gets actually plowed back into the society, okay? Consider the following, that when, it's very nicely put by Dr. Mande, that all of them, and one of them is the equity, okay? In terms of that general equity, whether we have people coming from different regions, different, kind of origin, all of them you bring in. Now, since this is, part of Dakhin, so people understand Bengali, let me take up one, a very famous, line from a Bengali poem, okay, called Kandari Husiar, when it says that Kandari bolo dubiche manush santan mor mar. So when people are in trouble, okay, you are in the middle of the river and the boat is sinking, okay, people are asking, I would like to be rescued. Then the boatman, okay, doesn't ask like what is your origin. Simply I tell them that they are the children of my mother. Okay, so that's a very nice way. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's a female part, male versus female, rich versus poor, then you have north versus south or east versus west, whatever the division that you do in the society. Okay, unless we take them part of it, you miss out a lot of them. Okay, we have to go up together. So equity is one great thing that happens. Now, at the same time, so when you move from equity you said that it's very expensive. Now, when you look at these expensive equipments, you don't expect all of them to be able to actually afford that. So if that can be done, as a matter of fact, DST has already certain kind of scheme they do, okay, the Sathi centers, where such things are being set up at different parts of India, where other people with a certain kind of, charges associated with that would be opposed there because, the system has to run. And it is to be made available for everybody. Okay, so if you have a nice idea, no matter where you are, you should be able to, you should be able to do in your own garage. You should be able to do in your somewhere else at your home, if possible. Can the system allow you to do that? I think I definitely like the one nation, one subscription, because it's very unfortunate what happens. It gets monopolized. Knowledge is very important. Okay, that we have to have the way where the knowledge is stored. There are the books and journals, magazines, whatever it is. We should have access. Okay, we understand there's somebody who is actually maintaining it, so there is a cost associated. Of course, we must respect that. But the thing is that nowadays in the digital era, as a matter of fact, if you find most of this particular kind of service provider, the cost is phenomenally higher than what it used to be in earlier times. Okay, even in places like one of the IITs or other places, we spend more than 20 crores just to have subscription yearly for these journals, which is definitely not possible. So it's like in UK and others, they have this crown copyright policy. So if we can have something for the entire country, then it doesn't matter. I may not need everything, but somebody in our large country needs something, so they can always have access to this one. So this is something that is really required. So it creates. So, and the other thing that I would like to, talk about is what is very important is an ecosystem. See, today's young people are very, very aspirational. Okay, they're smart people. They know what they want. Okay, but there may not be they may not have the opportunity to achieve what they want. So as our, the people who are involving in different types of incapacities in the country, our job is to make sure that we provide them with the opportunity to actually, to materialize their goals. Then nation will definitely go up in a much, much faster pace than we can think of. Now, what are those? So the ecosystem, something which thrives on innovation and scientific temper. And this is something that, let's say, for example, today in IIT Bombay, many of our students, not too many people want to go to abroad for their higher studies and others, very few, okay? But there are a lot of opportunities. They say that I want to set up my own startup. So that means instead of being something where you actually looking for a job, you create job, you create wealth for the country. Okay, so entrepreneurship. So we try to do that. Then you have to have incubators. Okay, then there also we must connect. There are people, they need money, so there are to be source of money to support them. Okay, and once that happens, then we'll have a research part. So then all this that can actually create an ecosystem. And now look at the educational part, like where we belong to. So somebody is doing PhD, okay, let's say, or a master's thesis, or even a bachelor's thesis. They come up with a good idea. And then they move out because they go somewhere else for another job and another positions, okay? So this is a common thing, everybody, all student from the institute, university, they must graduate, they go somewhere else, okay? Now, they worked on certain problem. It was very close, very nice idea, but his time ran out, okay? Moves to somebody, the student moves somewhere. Now the question is, what happens to the idea, okay? Now what we call, like, it may be at a TRL level 1 or 2, something, which our industry may not be very keen because it becomes like a little bit of, like a risky proposition, whether to absorb it. The student or the professor may not want to take it up to set up their own company because it's still not sure what is the TRL, the success rate for this, taking it up. So can we have something like a TRL booster? So that means within this system, we have some people who plan on this. So let's support that kind of initiative. So at the end of it, so if you can raise the TRL level to something higher, let's say 6, okay, 7, then what happens? Whatever the idea which actually was brought in, now it will be a lot more marketable to an existing industry or to somebody else to say that, can I actually set up now? There is a proof that this will work. Now I go ahead and do it. Okay. So this is something that we need to look at it. Of course, we have, in between a little bit of setback, if you say that because of the COVID, because the universities and others were, because of we had to shut down. But this is also an opportunity because it has created we can slide over here. Okay, we can, for example, we must so we should be able to actually give that one. So these are, I think, I have been talking for some time, but maybe it'd be good to have a discussion because, I tried to put forward something that what was the need for it. And now this has happened. And then we'll have to make it, and by the way, I'm very happy with this policy with one more thing, which is one of the, towards the last few chapter, like if you chapter, if there is something on the policy itself. Okay, because you are talking about STIP and within that there is a chapter on policy. Now, what does it mean? See, sometimes what happens when you come up with a policy, then the policy, are we stuck in the same policy or should the policy also evolve, right? So you put in a certain kind of dynamism into the system, okay? And this is very important, okay? Because today, the way the technology is moving, the science, the progress anywhere is very fast. Things are changing, okay, so fast. And this is something that has to be there. And I'm very happy it is there. And I would like to finish before, to this concept that when you talk about the library and another, is that, it talks about the knowledge, database, your repository, everything, which is very nice. So it is available by everybody. Whatever that I do here, it's available to somebody else anywhere, okay, or vice versa. Now, there is something is also this currently we are called that this is like an information society. Okay. We generate a lot of information. And I am told the amount of information that we generate is the rate of growth is astounding. Okay. So whatever, just to give you a feedback, Okay. So I read somewhere that whatever the knowledge or the information, rather, I would not call it knowledge, the information, the human civilization generated, okay, until the era of zero, which is 0 AD, let's say, okay, the same thing was done within the next 1750 years, okay. Now, after that, the same thing got repeated within, that means got doubled, right? So this happened within the next 200 years. The next one was in 50 years, right? Now you see that, and they predict that by 2135, the explosion, that means doubling of the information, will happen roughly in 6 months. So imagine today I put a paper for publication somewhere else. Within 6 months, its information value gets reduced by a factor of 2. Okay, by the time it comes out of the journal or a conference, the value is already done. So we are generating such a massive amount of information. But our issue is, so when we actually create such a repository, I'm sure there will be a large number of such things will be coming up. Okay. And the question is that out of that, we have to pick up what is the most relevant. Okay. And this is what actually to thrive the innovation, because information is not necessarily what is the knowledge. We need to pick up the knowledge out of this, all the information that gets generated. And I'm sure that when you have a repository with a proper kind of a system, then this should also help our creating an ecosystem, which will be a very thriving, and I look forward to that happening very soon. So I'll stop at this point, and and then later on we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, very beautifully you started why this policy change needed and what is the need of this kind of policy change. And then you went to the cultivation of science, and then from C.V. Raman, how he has to beg money for research, then to B.C. Roy, sir. And then you have taken the step of university education and the dedicated laboratories, yes. And research should be, as you told me, it should be result oriented. It should be helpful to the society. And if research is there, it will increase the product and the services. It creates opportunity. Yes, sir, it creates opportunity. And as you told, sir, that India has a large research constraints. And being in the Institute of Medical Science, I also feel that. And this STIP is definitely good. And this large population is a liability, but I think when this STIP will come, the person will become more responsible. Sir, we have to go beyond to put value proposition and compete globally so that we can give our products and thoughts can give light to the frustrated world. And we have to be optimal. Yes, sir, as you told. And prosperity depends on innovation. How much we innovate, and that much we will be prosper. Yes, sir, expensive instrument were there, but now because of this policy, they will be shared and it becomes affordable. Sharing of knowledge will increase the cost effectiveness. I said, really this ecosystem, this support system, kind of support system for researchers and collaboration with the interdisciplinary institutions will definitely going to boost. Thank you so much, sir. With how beautifully you have arranged all the things from starting to policy and again to the policy. Now, next we are having with us Dr. Shantanu Bhattacharya, sir. Sir is director in the Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science, Kolkata. Sir, education Sir has done education PhD from the USA, and he is a director since April 2015. He was there in the Indian Institute of Sciences from 2001 to 1996, and academic honors and awards. There is a big list. I would like to mention one: ChemoCon Distinguished Indo-US Speaker Award, visiting professor, London Science Museum, London, UK, invited professor in the École Normale Supérieure in the France, and visiting scientist, School of Medicine, Deakin University, Geelong, Australia. There is so much list of sir, your international academic honors and awards, and national awards also. Ranbaxy Research Award 2013, Honorary Professor Chemical Biology, Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research, Silver Medal, Chemical Research Society of India 2009, and I think this is a big list. I have taken 3-4 pages of the awards. It will take time, and it is a good opportunity to listen from you, sir. Right now, I will not take much time. So please, sir, enlighten us about the today's topic. So we are having with us Dr. Shantanu Bhattacharya, sir.
Thank you very much, the host, Sri Shishir Singh ji, and the other leading experts, Professor Shekhar Mande and Professor Subhasish Chowdhury. And I would like to first acknowledge the Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal, the Dakshin Banga Kshetra, and Ritam Bangla to provide this platform so that we can talk about and deliberate this very important change in the policy that is being envisaged in our country. Now, I think very important pointers have been already discussed. I think Professor Chowdhury, who thrives at recognizing patterns, or Professor Mande, who is a crystallographer, and again, he excels with application of graph theory. And I think I come from completely different subject, but all of us can actually come together to create a multidisciplinary situation by which we can try to understand each other, although we speak different languages. And I think very rightly, Dr. Chowdhury has pointed out the concept of science, education, and research came in the continent of Asia for the first time during the so-called Bengal Renaissance period, when first time Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay actually wrote in Bangadarshan concept which was actually picked up by Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar. Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar, who was the personal physician of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa Dev, he actually decided, although he himself was a brilliant student of Calcutta Medical College, this is only the second MD of Calcutta Medical College, he sacrificed his gainful career for the cause of the nation, and he realized that if we can create individuals in India, I think in other words, he decided Make in India concept that time, back in 1870s, almost 150 years ago, that if we can create an environment where we can cultivate science in all forms, which can lead to various comforts of life and various kind of understanding which can enrich our knowledge. So that was the concept by which in 1876 he started this movement called Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. And it was a concept for the first time in the continent of Asia, any institution which started, as already mentioned by Professor Chowdhury, and subsequently we know history here.
C.V. Raman, he did not get enough support there.
Nature from India came
Should
from
be able
here.
to do in your somewhere else at your.
Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee. He wrote the first paper in mathematics. Many of us know him as a very brilliant individual. He's a judge, a great lawyer, but he was a great mathematician that we do not know. But I think we need to know history of science in a very vivid way so that we can take inspiration and implement it in today's setting. Now, also I think Professor Prafulla Chandra Roy's name has been mentioned very appropriately, because what is so-called entrepreneurship, what is the application and translation of science and innovation from laboratory, he demonstrated it again, so many years ago. I think these are path-breaking examples in our own country which we can take advantage of. I can also mention Dr. Sir M. Vishwasharaya, from Karnataka. He has built, so many bridges and so many projects all over the country. Unbelievable kind of engineering skills that he has demonstrated. The list, it can continue. We had produced our
General Council of Scientific and
around the country, and they have contributed to the growth. Now, what we are talking about today is the National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. I think Dr. Mande has very aptly talked about various chapters which are included in open science, in capacity development, and various other points in various chapters. I would like to first talk about these things. I will formally make a presentation for the benefit of, where is the crossroad between the national education policy and the STIP, Science, Technology and Innovation Policy. I will take that opportunity to make that presentation. Just I'm sharing this. Is it? So, when we are talking about NEP 2020, this is a major transformational reforms which has been envisaged, particularly in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or medicine education. We should look at this from holistic point of view, but I think these opportunities coincided with a very difficult period that we are going through, and that is where we had this clarion call from our Honorable Prime Minister, where we are, role of science in building the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and while overcoming the COVID-19 pandemic, we must try to translate this into an opportunity in this new normal. I think we have been able to use our resources, whether you talk it in terms of cloud computing or online teaching. Many things India was not prepared to do, but we have done that. Similarly, we have created vaccines in our own country, and we are in a position to globalize it by distributing the vaccines which have been manufactured in our own country and distribute it all across the globe. So these are opportunities which gives us confidence how we can actually implement that in education, and particularly with reference to science and technology. I think the Prime Minister has mentioned that it is time to amplify the rich history of Indian science. Our youngsters must develop an interest in science, and according to our Prime Minister, they must get well versed with science and history of science. And if we look at over the last century, which we have been talking about, with the advent of institutions like Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science, leading historical questions have been solved, which led to winning of Nobel Prize from this institution by Sir C.V. Raman. And it is time to amplify with science and history of, and if we look at science, over the last century, which we have been talking about, with the advent of institutions like Indian Association, our government's cultivation of science and resources are diverted towards economy, infrastructure, technology-driven systems. Our vibrant demography, which Dr. Chaudhary has already mentioned, how to make it into an advantage and demand. And in that backdrop, this vision of creation of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan is a vision to transform India into a self-reliant economy. I think there are many examples: creation of PPEs just at the outbreak of coronavirus. We have various other kind of internet and mobile network, which gives us a significant push in, while with science and history of science. and if you look at there on various items over the last century, which we have been talking about of this EOVR. Now, coming back to the education policy, there have been many drafts which started back right after the independence of India. University Education Commission came about in 1948. And then we know about various other commissions. The last one, which was drafted by Dr. Kasturirangan committee, which was published on 31st May 2019. And I had the privilege of interacting with Dr. Kasturirangan because he was the chairman of the governing council of Indian Institute of Science, where I have been a faculty member. And I have seen the evolution of the education policy in his mind, and various kinds of concepts that has been contained there. They are really path-breaking, and it's going to change in a very big way the platform of education, not only science education, but entire education of our country, and which is long overdue. I think one of the goal, which is the Human Development Index indicator, is a gross enrollment ratio. Currently, we are hovering around 26.3, which we have made incremental progress from 25.8%. We would like to achieve in another 14, 15 years, a gross enrollment ratio of 50%. The gross enrollment ratio means, in a given class, enrolled students, this could be students who are as per their age, they're enrolled. They could be older students. They could be younger students, all of them together. And this is UNESCO has given this index by which it gives you a measure of Human Development Index. And multidisciplinary education, the flexibility of the subject with multiple possibilities of entry and exit gives us an opportunity to, give the students various kinds of scope. For example, in the United States, I had experienced students who are actually doing art history at the same time taking major in physics. How can they have music and physics or art history and biology, how they combine such kind of subjects and seamlessly integrate into multidisciplinary BS thesis in various universities? That is something we must understand. Similarly, undergraduate program, we can have two-tier situation, 3 or 4 years, which could be 4 years. We have implemented in Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. This is much like what we practice in US, and this has research-based component. We actually exposed our students right in their second year to various kinds of sophisticated instruments that we have at our disposal. And they have different modules in which they get exposed and they conceive their own projects. And this is right from the beginning we try to do. And we have actually, if they are doing a 4-year research by research bachelor's degree, they only need 1 more year to complete it just to get a master's degree. Now they're ready, they can leave at the 4-year end or at the 5-year end. They can go for graduate study elsewhere, or they can go into industry or other kind of academic institutions. So there is a possibility of integration of 5 years bachelor master's program. And similarly, one can do super integration where bachelor's, master's, and doctoral programs can be integrated. Now, this is where the concept which is envisaged is really futuristic. One can create, just like a bank, credit transfer. So you actually accumulate any kind of training that you have, you accrue that. And it's like a bank account, you put them together and you can use it. And, higher education institutions, which is research intensive, like, Indian Institute of Technology or Indian Institute of Science or ISCS, these are the kind of research intensive institutions. We can collaborate with teaching intensive universities. And we are all autonomous degree granting institutions. We can create this model of MERU, what is known as Multidisciplinary Education and Research University. And so this has various kinds of graded autonomy and idea of academic, administrative and financial reforms, phasing out the affiliation system and various other things which is there in the draft. I'm not going to talk about it in detail. I think one can look at it. It's available on the internet, but you have the National Research Foundation. This is a very important thing. NRF, this is key. This will provide you, a repository of various kinds of information. Internalization of education, where we would have integration of vocational, teacher and professional education. We must create a training system. The teacher is the key in dissemination of education. If it is science education or whatever subject has to be taught, teacher is most important ingredient. We have to bring them with highest level of importance. And there are in various colleges, we have teachers, particularly in science and technology, they are trained several years ago. They need to be updated in terms of their knowledge, not only theoretically, but also experimentally. This is required because you have to keep them up to date. This will not only provide motivation for them, this will also allow them, to be better connect with the students of our country. And these standalone higher educational institutions like ISCS or IITs or IISc, and there are various other professional educational institutions, even private institutions, will evolve into a multidisciplinary. And in this whole event, the Ministry of Human Resource Development is renamed as Ministry of Education. And, there are opportunities not only in science, but, focus on literature and scientific vocabulary of linguistics. And that we will not be able to cover under this particular discussion today. But I think use of technology in education planning, in teaching, learning and assessment, administration, management, creation of smart campus, where we should be able to integrate some of these things with self-disclosure and minimum human interface, bring in regulation. Increasing access for the disadvantaged groups, whether we have plenty of inequality even after, more than 70 years of independence. For various reasons, I'm not going to be able to get into that. We have to mitigate that in the best way. And that the best way to achieve this is to, provide increasing access to various kinds of disadvantaged groups. And virtual labs have to be created so that people can have access from remote places, and National Educational Technology Forum and digitally equipped teachers, students, and institutions will be a part of it. So I think, again, we would like to bring in various changes under this. And with this, parallel to national education policy, the 5th National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy, which has been very aptly introduced by Dr. Mande earlier and Dr. Chaudhary, I think we can have a discussion on this if we want to dwell on this. But I just want to tell you that at a time when the NEP 2020 is implemented, advancement in science and technology has become an important determinant in India's transformation into a self-reliant global leader. The foundation of innovation will be inbuilt through the creative efforts of our children and youth, and we must inculcate a scientific and innovative temperament in them. I think with groundbreaking changes in policy, paradigm shift in the processes of learning will be needed as they become more driven by critical thinking and innovation. And these have interconnected aspects. For example, promotion of science and technology and innovation, learning in the early stages of school education. And the other explores the pathways through which research and innovation can be reformed in higher education and higher educational institutions to facilitate the expansion of research and development, R&D. In this particular context, I think Dr. Mande has already talked about, any public funding system must have access to everyone, because this is given by the taxpayers' money. So we should have access, free access to all the research findings. And similarly, the research facility that we should create in different institutions must be accessible, for an operational cost, which is, which has to be affordable to the other institutions. A different kind of rate structure one can envisage for industries and colleges and government supported institutions and private institutions. And this should be made available, because sometimes some of the equipments are several crores in cost. One cannot afford that, but you need to intervene and get a result using that instrument. And in order to get access, this will actually revolutionize this. In fact, in some way, we have been doing this. For example, synchrotron facility, we don't have currently in our country. But I think Department of Science and Technology has created a situation where we have a multilateral collaboration with other countries like Germany, United Kingdom, United States, Japan, France, Italy, and we have the facilities which is there in their nuclear reactor. We have access. We can do high-end physics, biology, and chemistry research, and we can actually integrate that finding and produce new knowledge, which is for the benefit of the society. I think similar kind of concept for our facilities, we can disseminate, we can make it accessible to anybody, since this is public funded research facility. Similarly, I think open access to the papers, because many times, all the journals we cannot afford. They are prohibitively expensive because they belong to various kinds of societies and private bodies all over the world, but some of them are very critical because the critical findings are there. Students must gain access to that so that they will be in a position to update their knowledge, the findings, and so that they can reproduce that. So this is critical element in the facilitation of the expansion of research and development and open access, open science. And I think I would quote former President APJ Abdul Kalam here. He mentioned once that millions of people walk in this universe, and only if you have curiosity and thinking. The mission of schools indeed should be a generation of curiosity. I suggest thinking should be your capital asset, no matter whatever ups and downs you come across in your life. Thinking is progress, non-thinking is stagnation to the individual, organization, and country. And so it is in these, these are the prophetic words of this visionary statesman, which actually tell us that using this kind of thinking, I think new policies should evolve. And so that, this was kept in mind when formulating the recent NEP 2020, same kind of transformational changes are required, with analytic thinking, creative problem solving, critical examination of existing structure rather than just transferring information. I think Dr. Chaudhary has mentioned, the plethora of information that is generated. In fact, we are not in a position to delve deep into the rate at which such incredible level of information is produced. It's not necessarily right information, right or wrong, but it's a lot of information which are created. I think I can tell you one thing which is discovered, which is realized some years ago by Moore in nanotechnology, which is known as Moore's law, which is based on the observation that the number of transistors in a integrated circuit, actually doubles about every 2 years. I think Moore's law is an observation that is not merely confined to engineering or physics. This is a natural phenomenon. I think, we should actually inform, many of us who have studied, high school science, we have learned about Avogadro number. It's a very huge number, 10 raised to 23. That many number of molecules there in a mole, that's what we call Avogadro number. I think that's the level of information we are generating in some measure as we speak. And this kind of information we cannot analyze unless we have compartmentalization and,
Seven कितने करना
then
पेपर
only-
हो?
Hello? Yeah. So there should be a, strong focus in analytic thinking, creative problem solving, and critical examination of the existing structure. So as the Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2020 is getting finalized, it is important to draw the experiences of the national education policy and align the science, technology, innovation ecosystem's vision and its priority to ensure a holistic growth trajectory. So I think this STIP aims to build an educational environment that nurtures and encourages innovative thinking and also creates for pursuit in the long term. And in the current policy building exercise, we have kept our focus on select areas. We must learn to live, we learn to think, and we learn to learn so that we can innovate further. And first, a major attempt has been made to focus on innovation in education, which can help students and young scholars, particularly in higher educational institutions, to achieve quality research outputs from science, technology, innovation. We are talking about National Research Foundation that will give us opportunity for funding in a rational fashion, in a collaborative fashion, so that we can create new knowledge. The proposed changes in the curriculum development through a national curriculum framework and the complementary national curriculum framework for teacher education, which I have emphasized earlier, of the NEP 2020 will further add to the flexibility in pedagogy that encourages critical thinking, scientific temper, problem solving, innovative approaches, collaborative learning, and active learner engagement. And secondly, a dynamic and creative environment must be facilitated. We don't have in many places, except in few national institutions. We must create an environment where collaboration is encouraged. I am talking about a time where paper written by Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee in 1884, he reinterpreted Monge's differential equation in Nature. And that was a single author paper. And today in 2020, if you want to publish a paper in Nature, most of the time you will find the papers, the number of authors are in excess of, 22. I am saying 22, 2 cricket teams put together. It's larger than that. A very large team actually combines their complementary expertise, creates a multidisciplinary thinking, which eventually gives you a situation which can be found acceptable in a high-end journal like Nature. So a dynamic creative environment must be facilitated for collaboration between across the ministries, because science and technology is needed, whether you are going in the Ministry of Environment, whether you are talking about health, whether you are talking about education, you are talking about development of one kind or another, human development. You have also, we have river Shodhan Yojana. We have various kinds of schemes that government envisages. I think science and technology has a great deal of role to play, and students must be trained and will get hands-on experience in the fields of their choice once qualified in this manner, and then they will be ideal product to seamlessly enter into tomorrow's industry. We need to bridge the disconnect between research and education to overcome fragmented learning. In fact, national education policy envisages that we should have research back in the school times so that students can do even in the school research. That component is missing in a big measure. But if you look at the developed countries in the world, I think this has been there. I think there should be opportunities for them to, bring in different elements. Making research mandatory in schools and college education will be given a priority. this should also be complemented by strengthening incentive mechanisms so that they have higher success rate in Olympiad, in technology innovation awards, and they can get different kind of internships such as Intel fellowship. Many of our students whom we have produced through Kishore Vaigyanik Protsahan Yojana, KVPY, they have eventually become big target of countries like the United States. In fact, they offered them Intel fellowship. So these are opportunities. We create such kind of students. We must retain them. These are cream of our knowledge bank. And science, technology, engineering, mathematics, education, and general education are set to receive a better impetus through effective linkages. Again, STIP 2020 envisages to bridge the gap between curricular, co-curricular areas, arts and sciences, vocational academic streams, and provides possibilities of switching subject areas. Interlinking academia, industry, encouraging collaborative projects, need-based capacity building are required. Again, national education policy, which has proposed the establishment of National Research Foundation, will have significant funds for supporting research in science, technology, social science, among others. So this will bring in a multidisciplinary network which is required, and this will boost, promotion of entrepreneurial skills among students and make them, translate their fundamental observations. The research component, so-called, there are two kinds of research. One is blue sky research, another one is bird's eye view research. Blue sky research, where you discover fundamentals, and bird's eye view research is something which translates. Now, since we are taking public funding for doing our research, it is our responsibility to not only give access to our findings, also we do something which contributes to the benefit of the society. So we have a scientific social responsibility. So fourth, we must look at science beyond the classroom. To strengthen the education base, we must establish an infrastructure base to support educational activities with a special focus on digitized platform, research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And finally, fifth, there must be focus on the development of assistive technologies and learning resources. And this will create interactive, personalized learning environments for students with specific learning disabilities and ensure the expansion of STI ecosystem, which is equitable and inclusive. This must begin right from the seed level, that is at the school, and for the higher education, college and university, there is a need to support research, in particular scientific research in this domain, incentivize the development of haptics, smart devices, advanced bionics, and inbuilt speech and other sensory interfaces. I think with this, I again like to thank Rikam Bangla and Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal Dakshin Bengal Kshetra for giving this opportunity to ISCS to host this program. And this is a discussion where we are starting to learn the opportunities that it will harness once the new educational policy and science, technology, innovation policies are integrated seamlessly for the benefit of our youngsters. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Shantanu Bhattacharya, sir. Thank you for hosting the webinar also. Sir, you have beautifully explained the broader aspect of what we are going to get and what is going to be implemented right now in India. And you started very beautifully, sir. We need to know the history of science to cultivate science. Yes. And you have talked about the crossroad between NEP and STIP, where they are going to parallel and where they're going to cross. And role of science in building Atmanirbhar Bharat is too much needed. And this is right time to amplify the rich history of Indian science. Thank you so much, sir. You have told about the research also, that is how to go for research, and about blue sky and the bird's eye research, and this is the time for cultivation of science and for innovation of science. Thank you so much, sir. You have beautifully explained. Right now, I'm going to take the questions. I will see in the chat. The first question is that how to improve the quality science education in our schools, from Dr. Shashi Agrawal. How to improve the quality science education in our school?
I think this is a very important point. You know, our school, our science, particularly we are commenting on science in the today. You know, in the school education, particularly the science teachers need to be given proper encouragement, and they have to be given periodic, you know, they have to update their knowledge periodically, because science is, you know, continuously evolving. And therefore, if you actually change, you know, this is also envisaged in national education policy, the curriculum development has to be integrated, and it should change, you know, from time to time. You know, there are I will give you again example of United States Educational Testing Service, which conducts graduate record examinations, which you know as GRE. And similarly, another one is known as collegeboard.com, which conducts the Scholastic Aptitude Tests, SAT. And if you look at their examination pattern and the kind of questions they used to ask 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and now, there is an evolution. Very similarly, I think the teachers, they have to be brought into a pedagogic network, so that they have to be brought and given exposure what is happening, particularly what are the new knowledges which are coming, and we have to encourage them. You know, if you integrate them, if we encourage them, because, you know, then they will be able to honestly disseminate, fearlessly disseminate the new knowledge. Otherwise, you know, they will be stuck with some of the old notes, and they will be continuously, you know, there'll be a rote learning which needs to be totally you know, discarded. You know, if we ask them to update their knowledge periodically, they will be encouraged, and this will give them new kind of you know, encouragement to innovate the mode of teaching. They will also learn, and you know, students are, you know, young students are you know, seeking knowledge. There, many of them are quite bright. They would like to get interactive teachers who can ask their questions, not only the questions which they study in the syllabus, but beyond that. So I think for that, these teachers need to be upgraded all the time.
Thank you so much, sir. I think next question is for Dr. Subhashish Chaudhary, sir. Sir can explain rightly. Sir, question is how to encourage students to innovate new technologies and to go for creating a startup companies for theirs.
Okay, so thank you. See, innovation, see, finally, I think this is very much related to the previous question, okay, because that builds the foundation. So let me go back and say that sometimes when we are taught, okay, at the, you know, at the lower level, the key question that we never ask, or you are never taught to ask, is a why. Okay. See that our teachers, like, you told like just like rote learning. Okay. So when you see the why, then immediately there is another aspect, like particularly any scientist that you see, or engineer also, the next thing that is important, the eyes. Okay. What to look for, what to ask. Okay. Now, once you have that kind of thing, now you come to, let's say, whatever you're doing. Whenever you see a technology or anything, even service, any kind of product, okay, if you ask the question, why was it done like this? Then you can think, is that the only way to do it? Can I change something? Can you make it like, what are the things that makes it happen? What are the ingredients? Is it energy efficient? Is it like something different? Okay. Is it environmentally safe? All these questions, then you start asking. And then when you observe, your observational power goes up. Then you see that what could be a possible solution, right? Then you start into the thinking process. And by the way, the science is not like 9 to 5 work. Okay, let me put it directly. Innovation is also not like this. You have to be constantly in that mind. Okay. And then at some point you may have, that's like your eureka point, that this is what we should be doing. Now, once that happens, today's world gradually gets more and more complicated. It's possible that you alone may not be able to have a solution. You need to find people. Then you work together, get certain things like what you call the prototype of whatever you're building, see whether it has to improve. Finally, when you do something, either it has to be cheaper, it has to improve in terms of efficiency, in terms of whatever the kind of thing, it's a better value proposition for the people, so that then only the technology gets absorbed into the market or to the society. So once that happens, now this is where actually this thing falls through the groove, because you have some idea, but you also have to have a business model for it. Because if see, many times it happens, it's very interesting that, let's say I develop a soap, okay, something that I want to sell it, okay. That sometime it may happen that you have probably the best soap and it's not selling in terms of the ingredient, but some soap which has been nice wrapper, looks interesting, and people just take it up, okay, and it sells like a hot cake, right? So you have to take it to the process. There is a long, gestation period. Particularly in certain cases, it could be fast, but if you are looking at biology or certain other medical thing, the gestation period could be pretty long, okay? And then what happens, you need a support. See, most cases is that there has to be a support, the society. And in our case, society means in some cases, like we could say some incubators, it could be state, thankfully, the government over the years has come out with a lot of nice programs where there are these startup centers where you can go and ask for even mentorship. So they can even tell you how to actually come up with a business model, because you may have a best product, but that may not go to the market, okay? Then once you do it, you need more money, okay, in terms to plan this. So initially government may give you some kind of support, some incubators may give you support, but then you have to sell your product to certain set of venture capitals or, others. They would try to do it. And then once it happens, many times what we do, then you stop thinking. This is, now we have a product, we sold it, and we have a product in the market, it's doing fine. No. Then you have to constantly innovate that, because that also you have to see that how to improve, how to cut cost, or how to give more better thing. And this is a continuous process, okay? So you need hand-holding. And another thing is that many times, when you have a young person doing it, sometimes you want to bypass one aspect, the learning aspect. When you want to go for more and more technology-driven kind of a product, okay, there are a lot of science involved. So you need to know that. So if you don't know the science, you have to get into that first, because unless you know what is that basic science behind that particular technology that you are going to derive, it will not work. So all these are needed, okay? So any kind of innovation kind of ecosystem would require that, okay? Once you do it, by the way, it's not that always whatever finally you do, it will be always successful. The success rate is actually quite low. See, 1 in maybe 10 or 1 in maybe in 5, if you are good, will actually get into being a successful, the effort. So you have to, have that realization. And this is where many of the people try to be a little bit, I would say, hesitant into getting into that, because there is, you want to avoid the risk. But no, you have to jump with this, okay? The young people are more in terms of taking risk. So the system, the ecosystem has to say, yes, the society encourages you to take the risk so that you can jump into this. I know that some cases there will be a failure. And many times what happened is that we are prepared, very well prepared to take success, but we are not well prepared to learn, take failure. And that's where it becomes really, when you fall hard, it's really hard. Okay. So because of that, many of you are not wanting to do it. So this has to be part of the training, because if you fail, what happens? You're learning. What you learn, your experience, is what is going to count next time when you do it. And you have a much better chance of success. So this has to be the entire learning cycle that has to go. So it's very different. The way we are, like, let's say in teaching professor or scientific research that we do, it's a completely different ballgame, and you have to understand how it works. And that's when you do it, when you are successful, then you're extremely, you can go forward, but there could be a good chance that it's going to fail. And that's what is the ground reality. So if you do it, I have a feeling that, in a normal, typical, let's say in IIT Bombay, we have startups. Okay. So, a lot of startup happens. And of course, there is a good number of them do fail. They wind up. Okay. And that's part of life. And if we say, no, not a single one would fail, we have to have 100% pass. That will not work. So these are the ground realities we must realize. And then we should prepare our people that this is on that basis you should move. Then I think that particular ecosystem would be very useful. And thankfully that, whatever this STIP we are talking about, it would actually encourage and set up that kind of mentality for our people if the ecosystem gets prepared. I think that would be the ideal case. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Really, it was a and other regulatory bodies will get merged. And how will National Research Foundation function? This question from Dr. Nishit Kumar Das. I think this is a future question. How will UGC, AICT and other regulatory bodies will get merged, and how will National Research Foundation function?
Shall I take it, or Professor Bhattacharya, you want to take it? You're muted.
Professor Chaudhary, you take it. Then if I have to add something, you go ahead.
Okay. Sir.
Okay. Okay. So thank you. So of course, there is a logistics. There is a system that's going on. UGC has been there for a long time. Okay. ICT is also now fairly for a long time. Okay. And always, like in a company, you have merger and acquisition, right? So you can think when you do it, there will be always teething problems. Okay. So you should be prepared for that. But see, if you look at the NEP that you're saying here, or in terms of the STIP, when the National Research Foundation, right? So the typical thing that happens is that if you have multiple arms, and if each arm works separately, sometimes there is not much of coordination. There may be duplications of efforts. And there could be certain times think that, I know this will not work, but still somebody has done it in the other case and you are doing it. So there could be that kind of, the communication gap. Okay. Now, once you put them under one umbrella, okay, then what would happen is that then you can have like this kind of, the communication gap will not be existing. And it should, in some sense, help each of these particular, let's say, whether it's an engineering college, whether it's a science-related college, or something which is purely arts and culture, okay, with the liberal arts college, then all of them, there is a possibility of coming together, okay, under one umbrella. I tell you, in India, what happened, the education sector is very fragmented, okay. I tell you, another issue. Let's say, for example, we, or IISc, maybe others we come under Ministry of Education, okay, which is, of course, very nice that we come under Ministry of Education. What about yourself, being a doctor? Do you come under Ministry of Education?
No, sir.
Right? You don't come under Ministry of Education, right? Are you not following education? So medical education is completely different. It's a vertical separation, okay? And sometimes, this all the colleges and others are very different. Even if you look at IIT Kharagpur, they were trying medical college. Took a long time to even set it up. Okay. And whereas today we are talking about, I think, Professor Bhattacharya would be the right person to talk. Like we're talking about convergence of all these things. Bio is the next big thing. Like, similarly, you have AI and other things, right? This is one. Similarly, if you talk about in like Calcutta, ISI Kolkata, it's neither in this Ministry of Health, it's not in MOE. It's the Ministry of Statistics. Okay. And I'm sure there would be some other one. Okay. I think HB and other, they may be coming under Department of Atomic Energy. Right? So our education system is fragmented. Right? So we need to bring in together. So whenever you talk about something, so there would be some kind of a standardization. And that would be helpful. I think I would, maybe Bhattacharya would be the right person to take it up.
You have actually covered very nicely. Integration and unification is the key, because you should have a single standard based on which you rate performance. And if you have multiple standards, I think they will have conflict with each other. And that's why it is important that you integrate various forms of education, whether it is statistics, whether it is medical science, whether it is developmental biology, whether it is synthetic biology, whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it is, any other frontiers. We are now talking about data science, and all of these, there should be a single nodal body which integrates their, I think the administration should be governed by one nodal body, which will actually try to apply their mind with expertise, which are again multidisciplinary in character, and will bring a unifying model so that you can have a common, point, based on which you can assess their performance. That is critical. Similarly, because the support system has to be based on the performance. And the moment you go away from integration to diversity, that creates the very purpose for which such kind of mechanisms have been created. But this we have been dealing with for such a long time, more than 70 years. It's time that we create this Higher Education Commission, HEC, which will actually look into all of these aspects, make a common goal to integrate. We have to bring in unity in diversity, while diversity of subjects, diversity of, various kinds of training methods that will exist, that has no problem with the convergence when we are talking about the administrative mechanism. But along with that, you have the National Research Foundation that will bring in another common parameter, which will have different sectional committees which will assess, expertise in different areas. So, but there will be a common nodal mechanism so that one would be able to assess them in a single platform. Otherwise, there will be, situations where we are going to end up comparing apple and orange and banana, which are not going to be the correct thing to do. And that is what we have been doing.
Thank you so much, sir. Very lightly and very nicely, both of you explained the things. And yes, sir, to reduce conflicts and constraints, integration may be needed in coming days. Thank you so much, sir. I think we have not having any questions right now. And really, sir, I really feel privileged listening to all of you. You all are you can say the god of the science and technology. And thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to request, yes, sir.
I think it's not the god of this thing, it is the servant of science and technology.
Absolutely. I echo what Dr. Chaudhary has just stated. I would just like to give you one example of innovation where Professor Chaudhary has actually given his remarks. I would just like to give you one example. This is a real life example of C.V. Raman. C.V. Raman, he came from Tiruchirappalli, rural Tiruchirappalli of Tamil Nadu. And he was a brilliant student all through, in physics and mathematics. However, in India, we are talking about colonial India back in, early 1900. Now he became, one official, and he came as a finance officer to Calcutta. He was posted here because Calcutta was the capital in 1907. And he joined there, but his heart was there in science, but he did not have an opportunity. So he was traveling in one of the, his residence in North Calcutta to his, Accountant General's office, which is the other part of Calcutta where you are traversing. Those days, just a couple of years before, Calcutta Tramways has started its, transport system, and he availed that. And while, he was traversing one day, and he found in Bowbazar area, this is North Calcutta, if you are familiar with Calcutta, he found there is a place called Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. He actually got down, and he wanted to know whether there is any opportunity for him to do research. And there is a gentleman who is actually very little educated who was there, but he was, all these people who have been handpicked by Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar. And this is the time Mahendralal Sarkar was not alive, but his son Amritlal Sarkar was actually managing the association. So these gentlemen, Ashutosh De, actually he said, you are most welcome to come here and do whatever experiments you would like to do in science. And we are actually looking for people like you. And C.V. Raman, remember, he did not have a PhD degree. But for him, this is this internal urge to create or innovate. So necessity is the mother of invention. So he decided to come and join Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. So every day, before going to his office hours, which is, he had this residence not very far. He used to walk to this institute. He used to work there till 9 o'clock, go back home quickly, take shower and, take his lunch and go to office. And while he was returning around 6 o'clock, again, he would come to Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science till 10 o'clock. This was his routine. And in the weekends, all the weekend, he would spend entire time doing his scientific experiment. And those days, his passion was, physics of sound, to understand mridangam, the percussion instrument, which is very much known in Carnatic music. And, many of our friends from South India, we actually love Carnatic music. They're big exponents there. So C.V. Raman wanted to know what goes on, to give you such kind of melody. So he actually published many good papers subsequently doing this research. And later, he actually left his job, taking a job at half of his present salary at that point of time, taking a job which was offered by Ashutosh Mukherjee as Vice Chancellor, and he created the Science College in the northern fringe of Calcutta, and he brought in C.V. Raman as a chair professor. C.V. Raman, he said he thought that Ashutosh Mukherjee thought that it is necessary to give him an exposure which is international, to send him abroad. And while he was traveling, he saw how the changes in the color of the sky. And, as a function of distance, as a function of time, whether it is day or given time of the day, whether it is cloudy or whatever. And he started questioning the Rayleigh's hypothesis, which said that he thought it must be something else. He thought it is due to scattering of molecules. And then he returned to India and he started devoting entire research doing physics of optics. However, he did not have any funding. Those days, there is no National Research Foundation. There is no Department of Science and Technology. There is no CSIR. There is no kind of no opportunity to do research. There is no mechanism. So he actually, but the urge was so spontaneous for him to innovate. He actually wrote to G.D. Birla, major business magnate in this part of the country, and actually he gave him a grant. So this is part of the folklore, and by using that grant, Dr. Actually, C.V. Raman, he brought in various kinds of parts. He went to local market, put together, and he created his spectrogram, using which he eventually discovered what is known as Raman effect. So this is a par excellence example of innovation, but that came through his own internal urge to create something brand new. So I think that needs to be inculcated.
Absolutely.
And, we have to motivate young, bright minds. And again, we have to take these examples, as Professor Chaudhary has already mentioned. Prafula Chandra Rai is another example, how he could create, the chemical industry. The Bengal Chemical used to create, so many brands of consumer products using the knowledge of science. And this is completely self-sustainable. It did not require any support from, those days, this question of support from the colonial government did not arise. So we must create a space where, we have to create continuous roadmap for innovation, depending on our ability, depending on the requirement, depending on the opportunity. So that is what is needed when we want to create some kind of, translation of new knowledge and innovation.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we are going to end of this beautiful session. Thank you so much, sir.
First of all, I would like to thank all our distinguished speakers, Professor Shekhar Mandeji, Director General, CSIR, and Secretary, Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, Government of India. I will further acknowledge the great words that Professor Subhashish Chaudhary enlightened with us. He shared with us, the director of IIT Bombay, and I will also mention Professor Shantanu Bhattacharya, with whom I was always in contact for the last 7 days to organizing this program. I am thankful to him. He has supported, and with him also, I also would like to thank Professor Shomoprato Acharya, Associate Dean of Indian Association for the Cultivation of Sciences, and Dr. Mallikarjun Rao, who is the nodal officer for all the outreach programs of Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal from the ISES Kolkata. I am thankful to Dr. Shishir Singh, HOD Pediatrics from the National Institute of Homeopathy, for getting some time out from his busy schedule and host this program for us. And I will also like to mention Dr. Amba Shankar Vajpayee ji, the organizing secretary of Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal, Dakshin Banga Prant, and Shri Aishwarya Kushwaha ji, who is the Vistarak of Kolkata Mahanagar, and he's also pursuing PhD from Banaras Hindu University, for the overwhelming support to this program. And one more thing I would like to mention, that Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal, along with Niti Aayog, will be organizing around 713 programs, approximately 1,000 programs regarding the NEP implementation, and that will be beginning in February first week or second week, and we will be trying to cover all the 713 districts that the whole country has. And this program is just the beginning. It's just the preparation for such programs. And I would like to have Professor Chaudhuri and Professor Bhattacharya with us for guiding us throughout these programs, and will be thankful if again we would have the chance to hear from you, sir. Thanks a lot, and I end the thanking note here.
Thank you, everybody. It's on my this one. It was a pleasure interacting with all of you. Thank you. The BSM. It's a wonderful platform, and I hope there is a takeaway message for the lot of these young people who have been listening. And if 5% of them become innovators, then I think our purpose has been served. Okay, so let's hope that a lot of good things could come out through such kind of distance. So thank you and good night. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Shubhratri, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. I think this was really a wonderful opportunity to, discuss the, advent of new opportunities which have come through NEP 2020 and STIF 2020. These two things, these are going to be seamlessly integrate and create further opportunity for our youth and for our country. And this is a very important milestone for the development, because this has direct relationship with the gross enrollment ratio and human development index. These are the parameters which provides you ranking of how developed you as a country. So these are initiatives that we need to understand more and more, and make the stakeholders understand it, what are the implications of it, how to make good use of it, because this is an opportunity which is hitherto unknown. So this is something we need to more discussion is needed, more deliberation would be needed, so that stakeholders all across would get benefit out of it. And again, I take this opportunity to thank Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal for creating this platform of discussion, so that we can have more reach out to various kinds of places, particularly the remote areas which can be accessed today, which we have witnessed during this lockdown and pandemic period, that how powerful the media transmission is possible using the network. And thank you again.
Thank you then. Good night.
Good night.